Thanks for listening to GYST.
You're listening to Get Your Shit Together with Adina and Diane, a digestible health and fitness show for women.
Real quick, the content of this podcast is intended for general information only and is not medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Chat with your healthcare provider before making changes. Okay? Okay, cool.
I think they got it. Let's jump right into this week's episode.
Hi, it's a bonus.
It's a bonus.
It's been a few months too, and so we're a little rusty, but we thought we can't not come in here and share this chit chat with the girlies.
Yeah, how ya podcast?
Yeah, how do we do this? What is work? I don't know.
I think
my desk was like in all kinds of disarray from being on mat leave the last few months. I can't believe it's been almost 3 months. Wild.
it's crazy. I feel like you've just undergone an identity shift.
Yeah, major, just a little bit. And then you're about to embark on mat leave in, a few weeks? Are you going to work right up until baby?
I guess we'll have to see. I mean, I'm like 30 weeks pregnant now, and was our last episode when we announced my pregnancy?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
You kind of just slid it in there at the end.
That's really crazy.
So
yeah.
Spoiler if you didn't hear that.
Yeah, I'm pregnant with baby number 4, and my other 3 were all like, I went to 40 weeks plus, so who knows? You just never know.
And we're a little early. Well, yeah, that's what we're chatting about today is how I brought my little baby home and how things have been going. So, yeah, so much has changed. We're a little foggy, but baby's sleeping. I'm caffeinated. I'm hydrated.
We love that for you.
Yeah, we love it. But we have to do our shoot the shit. Duh. First things first. Lots of media has happened over here, but tell me a little bit more about what's been going on over there. I know that you've been working on another baby that might be launching this spring.
Yeah, that's the hope. I think we chatted briefly about this on the last episode, but basically STHH prenatal is well underway. Veronica and I have been little programming bunnies, just getting after it. I really, really, really want this program out into the world by this spring. Mostly because I want to do all of the filming with a bump. It is quite ambitious.
Yeah.
But
nothing like working under pressure, right?
Yeah, love it. I actually really do. But yeah, it's a lot, you know.
You sent me a tweet and it was like, I work under pressure or not at all. Right?
Yeah, it was
that
like,
you?
Yeah, it was like strengths works well under pressure, weaknesses
just doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you can use the bump for STHH prenatal and that girlies are probably chomping at the bit for that one.
Oh, it's so good. It is so good. Like every time Veronica and I wrap a meeting, we're just like, oh my God, this program is so good.
I bet you have a lot of ladies like ready to get pregnant just so they can use the program. I know. I loved what I did for just regular level 1 until I got into the coaching program. But this is outside of the club, right? So
yeah,
nice, so exciting. Over here, I'm not working on anything except for like sewing projects. I finally have energy to do that. We won't go into it this episode. Had an easy breezy time as much as you could through pregnancy and birth. And then I got sick. So now that I can use my hands and feel well, I'm sewing and thinking of all the projects that I want to do. And also while I'm on mat leave, we're going to be moving. I don't think I announced this in the last episode, but
you didn't. Diane has a lot going on.
A lot of exciting chaos. Lots of good things. I guess it just sometimes happens that way. We found a house after looking for several years, and we happened to close 5 days after we had our baby. And that was my first outing, very brief outing.
I feel like it always happens that way. It's just like something about those energies.
Yeah.
The big shifts always bring all the big shifts.
What are the planets doing? I don't know. But we literally went out to get keys and pose as a family on the porch, and we went home. And we have the luxury of not having to move quickly. Like we can take our time. So definitely taking all the rest for the first 12 weeks here and then just getting things in order before we move. So have a lot going on before I can even think about coming back later this spring.
So crazy. Like,
Yeah. And then tell me what you're consuming. Media, food,
man.
all things.
Okay. I think like I wrote down very simple things because I had a feeling that like our catch up was just going to derail this episode. So
Yeah. I
I
know. I'm
wanted to,
really reining it in right now.
I know we got to stay focused because we have a lot to cover. So basically, I mean, on the food front, I don't even know where to begin. We've been getting after our scones in a very major way.
Scones.
I don't know if I spoke about this last season. I feel like I might have because like we had just started at that point, but now I'm so into them and I have perfected my process, which I'll share about here real quick. Basically, I can drop the recipe I've been using. I think it's Little Spoon Farms recipe.
Mm-hmm. You sent it to me.
And
It's in the queue.
yeah, you should make it. It's really simple to do. And it's all about like keeping the temperatures right with scones. Like the butter has to be super cold when you grate it into the dough. But I have been loving lemon blueberry scones. So I'll make the dough the same way she describes for the chocolate chip scones, but then I'll grate in all this lemon zest and fold in blueberries. And then the thing with the blueberries, especially because I usually use frozen blueberries just for ease and having them on hand, but then if you put them in the fridge, they defrost and make the dough watery. So I make the dough, throw it right in the freezer, and I bake it straight from frozen. That is the trick. They come out so good. And
Oh,
so we just been eating a lot of scones.
that's a good bake. I just revived my starter. I was ready to have another pet, I guess. But I made a loaf yesterday and then English muffins. I really miss those because I tore through my freezer stash. One of my postpartum meal prep things that I did was breakfast sandwiches, and it was a
So
great idea. Like,
mm,
great idea. I wish I had like 50 of them. Maybe 14 of
yeah.
them right now. Yeah, they were so good.
Yeah, my other big sour is this a sourdough podcast? I guess.
Mhm.
My
Yes.
other big my other big sourdough thing I've done recently. I know I spoke about this on a previous episode because I was talking about how nostalgic it is, but I have been loving a cinnamon raisin loaf. Just loving it.
Love
Like
those
I
dry
always
grapes.
oh, so good. I always make like two. Usually, when I make I bake 3 loaves at a time. So I'll just make like a big batch of dough and I divide it into three. So I make 2 plain loaves, and then one of them has been getting cinnamon raisins. And I honestly think that it's better than most pastries. Just like a slice of
Oh,
crusty, fresh cinnamon raisin with butter and salt. Mm, mm,
that's very
mm.
nostalgic for my childhood. I had a lot of cinnamon raisin bread with peanut butter back in the
Yeah,
day. Yeah.
so
I'm
good.
finally starting to get back on the dinner game, and I've been doing a lot of meal and menu planning. I've shared some on my story, but a resource that I've been loving is What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking. It's a cookbook that I got, I think, this past fall, and I'm finally diving through it. And I like that it's divided into if you have 15 minutes, 20, 15 minutes, 20, 45. And there's some good recipes. So far, I've made some cheesy beef flautas and some pesto meatballs. What else? A few other things in there. And then my old go-tos like Ina Garten's meatloaf is in heavy rotation. But I'm really liking being back in the dinner game. And Neil was like Chef Neil extraordinaire when I was sick, but also like the first couple weeks postpartum where I was just in bed. Definitely the first week in or around my bed, as you've said here before. And he was amazing with the meals, but I really liked getting back in there. And I also made a yuzu roasted honey chicken the last couple of weeks, just marinating it, some
Yum.
miso yuzu. It was a yuzu miso that I used from Trader Joe's, I think. It was really
That's
yummy.
hard to say.
Yeah.
Yuzu, miso. You want to like mix up the vowels?
Right. Because I'm trying to clean out our pantry and I'm discovering all these random sauces and things that I ambitiously bought for who knows what. And I don't
They're
want to
not
move
all
everything.
expired.
No, there were some. There was some. I found an avocado oil from like 3 years ago. I was like, what was this? How
Mm,
did this sneak by here? I don't know.
gross. Bye.
Gross.
Yeah, I think someone might need to hear this. We are in a season of simplicity when it comes to the food. And I've
Mhm.
definitely shared about that on this show before because we've been in that season for a while, but now more than ever, like my kids have literally been eating either meatballs or burgers or sausage for
Mhm.
lunch basically every single day. And, yes, is it better to rotate your proteins? Sure. You get more nutrient variety. Is it also fine to just eat beef every day for lunch if your kids love it and
Beef
it's
three
really easy?
ways.
Easy for you to do? Like, yup, that's fine.
Yeah, I've just been switching up the seasoning. Like, I'm gonna put
No,
pesto in these
literally.
meatballs, or in these meatballs, we're gonna make it like a little bit of like a Greek meatball, or we'll switch it up just a little bit. Same with the chicken. Like, I'm gonna throw these chicken thighs in a bag with some miso. Another time, it was blending up some green onions and doing. So it sounds a little complicated, but it's minimal prep and nice result. Instant Pot too has been on heavy rotation for us.
Yeah, I wish I was even doing that, like a sauce, or it's literally been like rice, ground beef with some spices, and avocado, and that's the meal.
Yeah, that's all you need. What have you been watching on the media front? I'm sure there's been a lot over the last few months.
Yeah. There has been, but also not so much because I have been in a season where like I need to be in my bed at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And I've just been like, the days are just, they're full and they're wonderful, but that's all I can give,
Mhm.
And especially with the way things still are here, it's just, it's hard to hold it all. And so I have been rewatching some Gilmore, and Donnie is not happy about it.
He's like, no, I've had enough of this.
He just, he has such an ambitious list of media he wants us to consume. And I don't have it. But we have watched a few things. Notably, let's see, I'm trying to think what the last things we spoke about on the show were. We watched the most recent season of Sex Life of College Girls. I thought it started out really strong and then it just like got a little weaker for me. But there were definitely like enjoyable moments. We watched A Real Pain. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay, so it's Jesse Eisenberg and the other Culkin. The Culkin brother that's in Succession, who's just like hilarious.
Yeah.
I love him, but it's the two of them and they're cousins, and they go on this like heritage trip to Poland to see like the concentration camps that their grandmother was in. And it's just a really interesting story of, I think, like, it's not a Holocaust movie. I wouldn't call it that.
I was going to
It's
say, is it really
more,
heavy?
no, it's more about like, to me, it was about the Jewish experience of pain and how like we all carry this generational trauma and how it affects those of us differently. And I just think like Kieran Culkin is just delightful. Like, I think he's so funny and I think he's a really strong actor, and I really enjoyed him as this character who was just trying to navigate this complicated experience of, and he's not actually a Jew, but Jesse Eisenberg like spoke about the choice to cast him specifically. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was not like amazing, but it was thought provoking and the performances were great. I highly recommend.
Oh.
But then on a lighter note, did you see that it's the SNL 50th?
I
this
did, but I
weekend?
did not watch it. Or is it
Okay,
upcoming?
so it hasn't aired yet. It's tonight for you. Yes. So, but on Friday night, they did a concert of a lot of like the musical guests throughout the years, peppered in with some comedy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one bit, well, two bits that really were just wonderful. But one bit that literally was like my algorithm. It was like, did they make this just for me?
For me?
It was Lady Gaga and Andy Samberg. Like, quite literally, like, who else is this for?
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil it. I think you should just watch it. It's just, I love the like incongruousness of an amazing artist singing a ridiculous song,
Oh,
So,
okay.
anyways, Gaga ends up singing some Lonely Island, and it is just delightful. And then there was a Will Ferrell bit that really made me laugh also. But otherwise, it was just like some cool music. I thought Post Malone performed with Nirvana. You should watch
Oh.
that. It was like
Wait, with
So good.
Nirvana.
Yeah. Yeah. Like saying Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Hmm.
It
I was
was
gonna
amazing.
say they brought Kurt back.
No, it was amazing. It was really amazing. He was amazing. I did not know Post Malone could do that. Like, it was really good.
Oh, okay. I'll dabble. I have not watched anything deep over here. We've gone through 90 Day Fiance. I went back to the early 2000s, Wife Swap. Do you know this
Ooh,
reality
nice.
TV show? It's in
I
standard
don't.
definition, everything. Okay. Oh, what a
Lovely.
treat. You have to see it. So this is so messy. It's so messy. So they'll take two families with very different values or different situations. Like, this is Karen, and she cleans her house for 5 hours a day. And you have this B-roll of her like scrubbing the baseboards. And then you see this other family where they never clean their house, or there's a vegan family. At this point, they called them Bohemian or whatever, early 2000s. And then they had another family. They had another family that loves guns and hunting and grilling. And so the moms will switch places, and the moms will go to the other household, and the kids, the whole family have to abide by her rules for a few days. And so people, as you can imagine, are very resistant to the change, and all kinds of stuff unfurls. And after that, they will switch. They'll go back where the moms have to follow the other household's rules. Then at the end of the show, the couples will kind of recap their time, and it's just a whole mess of, I can't believe you run your home like this. And it's just really funny. It's really funny. There was a clip that I'm thinking of that was passing around in social media a little bit ago, where this boy was like, she is trying to take my bacon away, I think it was, and he's packing up his suitcase and leaving the house, this little boy. So it's just nonsense. But I've been watching that, and as we prepare for our house or for our move, I've been watching Homeworthy, like home tours on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. But some of these episodes, they're like really well produced. I think they have a whole TV crew and everything, and they're at least an hour long sometimes. And I'm nosy, and when I see these cool houses, like, I want to see these cool houses. I want to know about that painting over there and how you chose this really cool sculpture in your drawing room. So they have everything from like, here's an apartment in the Upper East Side to a tiny little eclectic home in Virginia, like just all kinds of different homes, and people talking about what's important, how they made it a home. So I really like it, and I get interior design inspo from watching these.
That sounds delightful. And also on the wife swap front here, I can imagine that being funny. And also, it would never happen now because they would just burn each other's houses down, you know?
Yeah.
Gotten so intense.
I know. I think there were some jokes in there, or just like spats that they would have, and I think I wonder how this would unfold now.
I mean, I know exactly how it would. Have you ever been on the internet?
Yeah. So it was hilarious. There was one episode of like husband swap too, and it's so funny. I can't remember what it originally aired on, but it's on Hulu. So really deep. I think I also tried Outlander, that a lot of girlies recommended. And the first season, okay, until the end. And now I can't get the theme song out of my head, and it's just not for me. But maybe I'll find another show when I have more capacity.
Bandwidth. You know, you can always text on me. I'll have something good for you.
Yes, because I don't quite have the attention span for a movie, a drama, but
who does?
light things, sure. Yeah, it's definitely rewatch territory. So shall we get into the meat of things while we're both like kind of lucid?
Still doing it. Let's go.
Yeah. So why this episode? Well, a lot of you were curious, and judging from my DMs on Instagram, and there aren't a ton of unmedicated on purpose birth stories from first-time moms out there. When I was pregnant and trying to consume some to just hype myself up, prepare myself up for the marathon of birth and delivery. And so, yeah, some listeners and ladies were curious about raw dog and birth, if that's something they're interested in, or if that's a preference or a goal that they have. And I also want to say, before we get into the meat of the episode, that any way that you have your baby is great. Like, you do you. I know this is very much not for a lot of women, and that's totally cool. And I respect however anyone chooses to have a baby. And this is the way that I was hoping to go about it, and things went really well, and there were some things that went left, but it all worked out. So we'll talk about that too. So in this episode, we're going to talk about preparation, how I went about choosing a team, how to train for the marathon of birth, the mental training especially were some things that people asked about, actual birth story, how it went down, and we'll answer some questions that listeners submitted on Instagram.
Yes. Well, also, I think another big reason of like why we're doing this episode is because Diane had a baby, and the Yentas got to know. We need to hear the story.
Yeah, I realized I was setting it up like it wasn't clear that I had. Well, I guess we mentioned when we were shooting the shit, but if you fast forwarded and weren't sure, yeah, she's been
so
here.
Exciting. She here. And then another thing I want to say, because like I know you kind of mentioned this about like any way you have a baby is great, but I do think something I have experienced when people ask me about my home birth and I share more about it, it's similar to the conversation we've had many times around like if you are choosing to eat a certain way or to parent a certain way, and then people ask you about it, no matter how earnestly you respond, how neutrally you respond, people feel judged. They feel like, I feel like the response I am met with is immediately defensiveness for why, oh, that I could never because of XYZ thing that happens in my birth. And so know that as always, we are not coming to this space from a place of judgment. We are coming to this space to provide story and experience of a person who chose a birth a certain way, and it went the way that they planned and it went the way that they chose. And that is a wonderful thing. And we're here to celebrate it. And we're curious and we want to hear everything and we're excited. But if you feel in any way judged by this conversation, please know that that is your own shit.
I thought it was going to be like more when you're like, if you feel judged, that's a you issue.
That's on you, baby.
Because we listen and we are not judging. Yeah. That really. I'm glad you said that though, because I mean, a couple of things. I would be scrolling TikTok and it was like TikTok knew I was pregnant. So it was like, here's a traumatizing story of how you should never have a home birth.
This could possibly go.
Yeah. Here's why you should never have a home birth because it's so dangerous. It's not. And here are all these other awful stories or they are positive, but perhaps they're told from moms who it was like their second or their third birth. And I just didn't hear as many from women who wanted to go into this like their first time. So I want to share that perspective and my personal experience. So know that when I'm sharing that, I'm coming from that angle. And yeah, you can send questions too if there's anything else you want to know, but let's dive into it. And if you weren't aware, we'll link this in the show notes. We told one of Adina's birth stories for Ori. I think it was baby Stu coming through, and we realized like it made it sound like his name is Stu.
It's not.
Was it baby Stu? Well, anyway, we'll link it in the show notes. But Adina, I'm sure share some of her experience in here too. So
yes, tell us, Diane. How did you prepare for this experience? Take us way back.
Yeah, so throwing it way back, I listened to birth story podcasts. I would just search them on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you've even started to look into home birth, unmedicated birth, raw doggin birth, as I've started to call it, you'll come across Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. And that is like the OG resource. It's an older book. But for me personally, it felt a little too commune cult vibes. The birth stories in it, positive, but again, it felt a little too crunch for me personally. And I also didn't resonate with a lot of like the Christian birth prep stuff. I know there are a lot of people in our audience probably who really resonate with that. It just didn't for me. So one, I sought out a lot of positive stories. Anytime if I was on TikTok, I would see like this is how things went so horribly wrong. I would just say not interested and seek out positive
not interested
stories.
In this.
Not interested, not for me. I just wanted to surround myself with positive stories. I also, Neil and I took a gentle birth class, and I've had people in my DMs already say what courses, what classes. And I think 5+ years ago, I might have thought I need to consume all of the classes, join all the classes. And I didn't feel that way going into this, in part because I had a lot of other shit going on, but also I had friends and just intuition telling me like, you're going to learn when you go through it kind of thing. But I knew that for me, I wanted to at least know like the different stages of labor, because I didn't want to have it start and be like, what is happening? So I wanted to know the different milestones, if you will, of labor. So our doula was actually an instructor for gentle birth. We did a little weekend class. I say a little class, but it was a couple long days. So we learned like when to call our provider, like what a mucus plug is. That's a horrible name, and it needs a rebrand. I started calling it a birth cork or bloody
Popping
show.
bottles.
Yeah, or bloody show. Like I didn't get tickets for that. Like,
Yeah.
what can we please rename them? But yeah, I felt like I didn't need to do all the classes, just wanted the basics. And with gentle birth, they also have an app which is free. I think there is a paid version of it, but I loved all of the just the dashboard in it, and it had a lot of hypnosis, which I found really helpful. And especially if you don't resonate with Christian hypnobirthing, which tends to be a lot of the resources out there. So I really like that. I would listen to one to help me fall asleep or just to help me get in the mindset for birth. So Gentle Birth, the app, and classes were really awesome. Did you ever use any of those? I think you mentioned hypnosis or hypnobirthing to me before.
No, I did not. I mentioned it as like this resource exists, but personally I didn't use it. I did a birth class with my doula before. Oh, sorry. She wasn't my doula yet because I didn't have a doula for Minnie's birth, but I did hire this doula for a course. Same like you were saying, it was more just learn about potential expectations, learn about the, labor stages and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I will say, even if you do take a course, you still are like, am I?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Because I would ask, I mean, I think I asked you, I asked other friends who have had children, like, what does it feel like? Can you describe to me what a contraction feels like? And sometimes I would get information that sounded like, all right, like cramps. But yeah, sometimes when you get there, when things start thinging, you're like, is this birth? Is this labor? Because everybody and everybody's experience can vary too. So yeah, it was interesting. And learning like, here's how to time the contractions, that helped me feel a little bit more mentally prepared instead of just like, what do we do? Other ways I prepared, I can share this in the show notes if anyone wants it, but I made a playlist. And so again, I didn't want like the calming spa vibes. Later, I wanted quiet in labor, but at first, early labor, I wanted early 2000s, late 90s hip hop. So I made a playlist called Yeet That Baby Out, and some tracks from it. Oh shit, I thought I was about to play it. Rock Your Hips by Crime Mob. Really liked Pop, Lock, and Drop It by Huey. It's Going Down by Young Jock. Get Low by Lil Jon and the East Side Boys. Work It, Missy Elliott, of course. Hot in Here by Nelly. So those that just gives you a taste. But I'll link the playlist if you want it, whether you're going into labor or not.
Sounds like a blast.
Yeah. Did you listen to anything for any of your births, or were you like, turn everything off? I don't want any sounds.
Yeah, I did not. But I'm like that always. Like people think sometimes when I post my training videos, people are like, in silence.
You're like, I'm listening to my breath. Thank you.
I don't know. I feel like also my household, well, it's a few things. I grew up in a house where there were 3 TVs on at all times, even if no one was watching them, and people were talking on the phone on speaker, like overstimulation station. And so I just need silence in my home. Like I will not purchase a toy for my children that make noise. And between the 3 of them, there's plenty of noise in here outside of that,
Yeah. So no DJ turntable for next baby, because have you seen those?
Nope.
It's like a Fisher Price DJ turntable, and I've seen like videos of little babies like
so cute,
jamming.
But like no, anything that makes noise, get out of here. So I feel like my time that's to me, I just need silence.
Yeah. There definitely was a point where I just wasn't even thinking about music at all during labor. But I mean, the early parts, I really liked it. And I still listen to that playlist. I'm trying to get Olympia. That's our daughter's name, by the way. Trying to get Olympia to enjoy some of the music I like. I'm sure there will be Bluey and other things, but yeah.
What? It took a while for us. When you have one and they don't go to daycare, like you can control that shit for a while. Like
Nice.
Minnie really listened, I mean,
Gaga, Joan Jett.
yeah, it was a lot of that for a long time. And then slowly some like Daniel Tiger creeped in, and
Taylor Swift.
now,
But you like Taylor
yeah,
Swift.
yeah, I like it. And I think it's really, I think it's a great fit for Minnie because it's so storytelling focused, and Minnie loves lyrics. Like she'll just chew on them.
Yeah.
So
Just very musical.
yeah, I was joking with my brother about this because Minnie started singing some like inappropriate songs. And also, as you learned when you were here, there's no radio edits here. So like you'll
No.
just be in an ice cream
No.
shop and like F-bombs are dropping. Like, so she comes off her little like van that she takes to school, and she's like,
No
You
radio
said the
edit.
you said the F word's a bad word, but it's in all the songs I listen to. Like.
We've already talked about how we'll handle swearing, and Neil's like, yeah, absolutely not. And I'm like, maybe we just say they're house words, like at home words. We'll see. We have time to think about it.
We've been on a journey. My kids, we've tried many approaches because it is getting out of hand here. Like now Ori walks around saying it, so something.
Selfishly, I want a video of that.
Yeah, I'll try. It's really funny. I mean, once they're in school, it's just like all hell breaks loose.
Right. Well, a lot of people in my DMs were asking about assembling a team. Like, how did you choose a team? And a couple of questions that came in were, one, how did you get your husband on board?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we might have talked a little bit about this before in past pregnancy related episodes. And then how did you find your midwife or doula? So I'll answer the first one about husband on board. Neil was a little bit wary at first, but not really. He said he trusted my judgment. He's like, it's your body and like you have to do this. So like I trust that you've vetted whoever you're choosing to support you, to support us. But I think something that was really helpful was that our midwives hosted an open house at the birth center that we were hoping to go to. And so I think after that, he really had a lot of peace of mind. He was able to see and learn more about their qualifications. And that gave me peace of mind too. So whether yours has an event or not, meeting in person, I think a lot of them do this, or phone calls, consultation, because it's such a personal relationship that you want to have at least that.
This is such an important thing, and I'm really happy we're discussing it. I think if you are a person who either your partner has expressed a hell no about home birth, but it's something you're curious about, or you just assumed that they would be a hell no, and you kind of just like talked yourself down about even bringing it up, I think scheduling a call with a midwife team can make a massive difference in just opening up the conversation too, because we definitely talked about this on our either when I was finding my team for Ori, we did a Zoom with them because we were still living in the States. But yeah, Donnie had a lot of questions at first, and I feel like it's so funny because now he is like
all about it.
Advocate for how he just walks around. Like, wait, I think we posted that Jim Gaffigan thing.
We did, and it went a little viral. Yes,
yeah,
like a witch.
Yeah, you don't want.
Neil's kind of done that too. Like he's told people, like, yeah, she did it home, not at home, birth center, and he's like, I'm so proud of her. So, yeah, he was pretty supportive the whole way. But I totally understand, and I imagine that most birth workers, they're going to anticipate that there might be a partner that is scared or a little bit wary, but hopefully they're ultimately on board with you, because trust yourself. If this is the way that you want to try to birth, then awesome.
Yeah.
And there are resources that can assure you, or meet with them for sure.
Yeah, even if you're a little wary about it, but it's something you're kind of curious about and you just didn't think to ask the questions about the things that you're nervous about or scared about, I think you might be really pleasantly surprised to find out, what the protocols are if XYZ happens, and if, a hospital transfer was necessary, what does that look like? Like, just what do you bring to support me if there's an emergency? Like, just asking all of those questions.
Yeah, those are great questions.
It might look entirely different than you had envisioned it because you saw some media content about home birth, or you grew up in the 90s when it was like, you must be a witch.
Yeah, you did that on purpose?
Yeah.
Exactly. I can't explain it, but I mean, I guess I'm just I was always trusting my gut through this whole process. And as soon as I knew I was pregnant, and before I got pregnant, I knew like this is the way I would want to be supported, is by midwives and a doula. So midwives, they were responsible for my prenatal care, helping me through birth and delivery. Our doulas were there for physical and emotional support for both me and my husband. So to answer the question, did you use one and how did you find and vet a doula? A few people asked that. I asked a client, a sweet local client that I worked with for a few years, for a friend. I said, hey, one of my clients is looking for midwives and doulas. And I knew she had really vetted her providers. So I just went and contacted a couple of them. And there are, I know there's no one like certifying body for doulas, but is it through DONA, DONA, that you could possibly find them? But I would just encourage people to ask like their midwives if they did find find their midwife first, or ask friends if they know of any, or family members who have maybe used the support. And I also want to note too that a doula can support you through any kind of birth. That is maybe a question to ask them when you're interviewing, is, are there any births that you wouldn't support? But most of them, and definitely ours, said that whether you chose to have a home birth or birth center birth, or if you decided to be in the hospital or you needed to be in the hospital, even if you needed to have a C-section, they can still support you through that experience too. They're there for like your emotional coaching and physical coaching.
Yeah, I think word of mouth is like really the best way to find out. And I think also, well, okay, two things. Word of mouth, and I think also social media. Like if you're on social media and there's a birth worker that you vibe with, even if they're not local to you, birth working is a pretty small network. Like I would DM them and be like, do you know someone local to me who is works in a similar manner to you, is like-minded, similar personality style, like that type of thing. And then the other thing is, even if you do get a recommendation from someone who you really trust, it is such an intimate experience, and you might be shocked to find out what your preferences are for the way someone will support you. Like you could have someone who you consider totally like-minded, and then you meet someone who supported them in their birth, and you're like, this is not a good fit, like
not for me.
It's like that scene with Alana in and she's meeting the doulas
In Babes.
Yeah.
We just watched that movie over again. You have to see it if you haven't watched it. Babes is, or when she poops in her diaper postpartum and they're like, you weren't supposed to do that.
Man. Oh God.
It's so good.
It's so good. But honestly, it is so good. And it is like the most accurate representation of pregnancy and birth in media that I've seen.
Except for when they were at the restaurant, she's just like, just having the full meal, but just spent hours and she wasn't sure if she was in labor. I'm like, girl, it's her second time. I would think it would go a little faster than they were depicting, but it was pretty funny.
As far as the details, they were a little, and like the things that they were
trickle.
Discussing and that kind of stuff, it felt much more honest to the actual experience.
It is. But yeah, it is such a vulnerable, personal experience, intimate experience. And I was able to do a consultation with both our midwives and our doulas, and they were very like, no pressure, let me ask all the questions that I wanted to. And just in that meeting, I was able to click with them, and I knew, all right, they're very personable. Our personalities vibe. Actually, one of our doulas looks and has similar mannerisms to my childhood bestie who used to be a doula. And some people ask me like, oh, is she going to assist you through labor and birth? She would have if she lived in Michigan, but she lives in Virginia, unfortunately. So she didn't get to, but she did assist me via phone. So our midwives too, as far as assembling our team, they spent an hour at least with us every prenatal appointment. And with our doulas, we had a couple of appointments with them as well. But I chose to go this route, one, because I just felt the most supported by women who live, breathe, birth, babies, labor. And I've had some bad experiences with GYNs personally. And so I wanted to be with a team of women I trusted, who respect me and my values, and who saw me as a partner versus just a patient that they were going to talk at. Or I didn't want someone to just tell me this is the way things are done conventionally, and so you have to do that too. That would very much not fit with me. So
yeah, I feel like a big red flag for me is if the person thinks that they're delivering the baby. Like,
Yes.
I am delivering the baby and you are supporting me.
You are
Like,
supporting it. Maybe catching them,
yeah.
but you're supporting me. Someone
Yeah.
asked, how did you ignore the haters? And I feel like the answer would be similar for both of us is like, I don't care what someone thinks of how I chose to birth. Like I had family who was like, you're going to do what? Like on
Mhm.
purpose. And I don't care because it was at the end of the day, it was going to be me that had to go through it. And I just trusted my gut. That was the way I wanted to go. And people have also asked me about birth plan. And I think me a few years ago would have had a very rigid plan of what I wanted. But this way I approach it as preferences. Like I knew if nothing else, no matter how the birth went, I wanted to have the support of a doula and midwife. Doula, I think, was some of the best money spent, and really, really happy with that. I feel like, for me at least, I thought OBGYNs are great at surgery, but midwives, like our midwives, have done over 500 births or something insane like that. And I was also really comforted by the stats that our midwives shared with us. From 2016 to 2022, 95% of their clients' births were home births as planned. 60% of them had intact perineum, intact gooch, or only first to second degree tears. Do girlies have gooches? Yeah, anyway, first to second degree tears. So I thought, all right, pretty cool. Went as planned. Didn't rip a new one. So maybe I can be part of that stat too.
We like it.
Yeah. So I guess we can get into how everything went down. That's what the Yentas want, right?
Tell us.
Yeah.
Tell us all.
Yeah. So here we go. So I thought first timer, I'm going to go a week to 10 days or more after my due date. And so I was preparing for the long haul, but I remember the weekend before I was like, I don't think that I'm going that far. Like I feel more pressure. I was craving a lot more carbs and I had this major nesting urge to stuff the freezer and I procrastinated. I definitely procrastinated on that, but it was
Works
about
well under
37.
pressure.
Yeah. I was at like
Doesn't
37
work
weeks.
otherwise.
And I was like, kitchen marathon. Like I was making those breakfast sandwiches with the English muffins, shepherd's pie. I could share more of what I prepped. It wasn't my full list, but I really got after as much as I could. Did you have a sense before any of your births, like it's happening soon, before like more physical signs of labor?
So it's funny. I mean, did I tell Abe's birth story on this podcast? I don't think so.
No, you have definitely told me it was like fast and
Yeah.
furious, right? Like almost.
Yeah. It was very weird.
Yes.
There were no physical signs to me that something was happening. Donnie and I were just like sitting on the couch and we were watching The Politician, which I feel like I talked recently about this show. And it just kind of like came and went and nobody watched it or talked about it. And I think it's like one of the funniest things to be on television. So check that out if you like Ben Platt. It's really just like silly and fun. Anyways, we were watching The Politician. And after like one episode, I was like, I think I'm going to go to sleep. I feel like the baby's coming tonight. And he was like, why? And I was like, I don't know. I just do. And then I woke up at 2 a.m. My water broke. And then Abe was earthside by like 4 a.m. It was like really
Quickly.
quick and dirty.
Expeditiously.
Yes, a speedy delivery. But yeah, who knows? Like I feel like I was so out of touch with my body when Minnie was born.
Yeah, first
And
time.
yeah, Ori, it was kind of like my parents were coming here and they were like our plan A for where my big kids were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't coming till my due date. So I feel like it was kind of just one of those things where my body
Like
was like,
hold him in
not
there.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how much there is. Like, I mean, you have to feel safe to a degree,
Yeah.
right, to be able to go into labor. I remember. Well, my friend Adrian was visiting from Chicago to bring me some baby stuff that they weren't using anymore. Most importantly, the infant car seat that we would need to be able to take our daughter home. And
Yep.
I remember thinking, I was like, I need to make it until after I see her. I need to make it to Thanksgiving. And I also was like, all right, let's wait for Thanksgiving and then this baby can come. And she had other plans. So I think it was 37 weeks. So that weekend was feeling a lot more pressure. Monday came and I had plans that I wanted to go out for socially that night, but I was like, I'm not really feeling them and feeling a lot more pelvic like pressure. It's probably early labor at this point, not knowing it. And so I canceled a coffee date that I had the next day. I was like, I'm not really feeling it. And then Tuesday morning, I woke up with some cramps was calling them cramps, and a really hard belly. I had some Braxton Hicks contractions, where my whole belly looked like a square. And I took a video of it, and now I just found it on my phone, and I'm like looking down. It looks like I'm just naked, or like I'm looking at a turkey, but you couldn't see beyond my belly. And I was going to send it to my midwives. So I was like, my belly's really hard. And I remember standing up to go to the bathroom to greet Doug, our pug, and had some bloody show. So there was some spotting, which if I hadn't done that class, I'd be like, oh my gosh, something's wrong. But it was some little spotting, a little bloody show. I hate that term.
I feel like even if you did that class, like you look down and you see that and you're like,
oh,
the worst is on its way.
Yeah, no pain, but it was cramping, like, oh, my period's coming, like that kind of feel. So to anyone listening who hasn't had a baby yet, wondering what it feels, it felt to me like, oh, little period cramps. So I texted my midwife because they gave me a number in my info packet, like text this for questions throughout pregnancy and then when labor starts. So I texted her, didn't hear back. I was like, okay, rude. And then I texted again, didn't answer me. So I finally called the number, and this is after texting details. Hi, this is Diane, my full name. I'm having bloody show, blah, 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 blah. This woman answers and goes, hello? And I go, hi, is this my midwife? My midwife's name? No. And someone has been texting me, and it sounds like she's in trouble. She's been texting me, and all the other people are texting me about labor, and I wish I could help, but I'm not a midwife. So I have been texting randomly, because throughout pregnancy, I had other gross, like bodily function questions that I asked my midwife, my midwife, but I had the wrong number.
Okay, so many things to say about that. It's so unfortunate that you are on the sending side of that, because I feel like we've all been on the receiving side of that in some way. Like the other day, Donnie got this message on his phone about like this ship and like this whole thing, and he's like, what ship sank because this guy had the wrong number? Like,
did Donnie respond? Because this person, all she had to do was say, this is not your midwife. But she just no.
Maybe she was worn down from how many of those texts she's gotten. Like, you don't know what number you were.
Yeah. So I was freaking out, and I was pissed. I was pissed at this point. I was stressing. So I went into the midwives like Facebook group, and I asked if anyone had the right number for the midwife. I got it. And they're like, oh, sorry about that. But I felt like they weren't as pressed as they should have been. But it's funny now that I had the wrong number. But it was very not funny in the moment, because I thought I was about to send her the video of me looking like a turkey to show my belly, my like naked belly. I've been talking about bloody show. So yeah, anyway, this lady could have just said it was not my midwife. But she waited until I called her. So that happened. That was one of the things that went left.
So good.
So that happened. Finally get a hold of my midwives, and I had a prenatal that day. I think I was 38 weeks. So a couple weeks early. And they're like, yeah, come up for your appointment. And then meanwhile, I'm in denial, and my mother-in-law comes over, and she's sitting with me. We were going to sew, and I was going to pack my freezer with more stuff. So she's sitting with me. I'm like, I'm having cramps and I'm having some pressure. And she's like, girl, I think you're having contractions. But they were so random, and like some were short, some were a little longer. I don't even think I timed them, but they were pretty random. So we just kind of hung out. And I'm texting Neil when he's at work. I'm like, can you go to the store and get some more ingredients, because I want to prep before Thanksgiving. I want to prep some more stuff for the freezer. He's like, I don't think that's happening. So he came home. I blow dried my hair, and I was like, these are picking up a little bit. So we packed the car before we went to our midwife appointment. And when we're driving out there, she kind of lives, her office is like out in the country a little bit. Every bump on the way there, hated it.
Yep. That sounds terrible.
Didn't like it. So I'm still having that pressure, as I'm calling it. But I think something that helped, someone asked about mental prep. It was brainwashing and like gaslighting myself a little bit. I went between telling myself, get comfy because things are going to get a lot worse, or this is going to last so long, because it very well could. Like, you could be in early labor for a few days, right? So I went between that and, you were made for this, you're trained for this, don't worry about it. And I don't know, I did have a couple moments of anxiety before going into labor. Like, there are only two ways this baby can come out. And she has to come out somehow. And neither sounded fun. Could you relate to that? Like, did you have any moments of anxiety before any of your births? or certainly the first one.
Yes. I think, like you said, the brainwashing is very helpful. Specifically with Abe's birth, because I really wanted to do that one without an epidural, because I had an epidural with Minnie and it was a terrible experience for me. And as you just heard, like Abe's birth was really short and really intense. So at 2 a.m., like right after my water broke, I was already in active labor, but I was talking myself down so much because I'm like, if it is this intense at this point, I'm not going to make it. Like little did I know, like he was basically almost out at that point. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm literally like leaning over my couch trying to pack my bag, being like,
Uh-oh.
this is fine.
This is fine. Yeah, I really went between. I even told my doulist this in like one of our last meetings, like that Thursday prior. I was like, I don't know if the support I'm going to need is people think you can't do this, like talk shit to me, or tell me like you were made for this and like really root me on. Like, so I ended up
Yeah.
wanting both flavors, but
That
I did have
checks
that
out.
moment of anxiety, like, oh my God, there are only two ways she can come out. So we were driving to the midwife appointment,
That
and
also, by the way, very, very relatable, I'm sure, for a lot of people, is like that always happens during transition of labor. Like towards the
yes,
very end, it's right about to happen, and you start being like,
I can't do this
there's no
anymore.
way in hell. Yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah, which means that your baby's almost there. So I remember that
Yeah.
from class. They're like, when you feel like you're going to throw in the towel, like that means your baby's close. So just, I mean, don't apply that really early in labor and be like, I can't do this. They're like, well,
Depends what type of person you are.
yeah,
Okay.
it depends. So I go to the prenatal, and then I had to do that Group B strep where test where you like swab your front hole and your
Mhm.
back hole. And I'm like gripping the counter. I'm like, "Mm." And I come out and they're like, well, things could still stall. And I'm like, they don't feel like they're stalling. And they're like, it could still stall. And I remember the student midwife, and she had just such a calming voice. She was like, how are you feeling emotionally? And when people ask you if you're okay, I like started crying, and I was like, I don't want to have my baby on Thanksgiving and make you miss your Thanksgiving. And she said, she's like, a lot of babies don't get to choose their birthday. So, letting yours choose when she wants to come is a gift. So that broke me down. But they're like,
Mhm.
go home and do the mile circuit, which is like a few different stretches or positions to try to get baby in a good position. There's one where you're kind of laying down with the pillow. So anyway, we go home. It's like 5 o'clock at this point, and Neil's making me some scrambled eggs and sourdough. Someone asked what I ate in labor, and I was like, I want a bunch of eggs, like buttery eggs and sourdough. So he's making me that, and I'm doing these different positions, but every time I moved, I would have a contraction, and I just lost my appetite at that point.
Mm.
And Doug was glued to my side, like completely glued to my side and on me, our pug. And some of it was back labor. Like I was feeling it, not those cramps in the front, but in my back. Would not recommend. So,
Yeah, that was my whole labor with Minnie. It was
oh,
really terrible. And then I went to a hospital for that birth, and they made me lie in a bed on my back, and I was just like, well, this is
no.
not how I'm going to do this ever again.
Never again. Would not
Yeah.
recommend. And yeah, back labor, not fun. And people asked about like someone said, be honest, what was like the pain and intensity like? And again, everybody is going to feel this different way based on where your baby is, your body, all of that. But I personally felt like this earlier part at home when contractions were more erratic was more intense, more painful. So I had been chatting with my doulas all day. So I let my midwives know. I let my doulas know. So they were the emotional support. So they called. This is where something else goes left again. They called me to listen to my breath. And like Adina was just saying, where like every woman, when they get to transition or towards the end, they feel like they can't do it. They've done over 500 births, and they said that through different parts of labor, women make kind of similar noises or breathe
Mhm.
similarly. So they wanted to hear how I was breathing through contraction. So my doula calls me, and she's like, Diane, the other doula is traveling, and my son's having pneumonia, and I feel like I'm getting sick. So I don't think it would be good for me to be at your birth tonight. Like, I don't want pneumonia either. But I started sobbing. I was like, you're not going to be there. And they talked me down. They're like, we have an amazing doula on call who can come over to your house right now. She's going to meet you there, and then you guys can go to the birth center. And I trusted their judgment. I loved my doulas. I trust their judgment. And I was still upset because this is not how it was supposed to go. Like texting the
Yeah.
wrong person. And I hung up, and I told Neil, like, I was very hormonal. I was like, I'm just going to go out in the woods and shit this baby out myself. I was like, it's just me doing this now. Fine. And he was like, calm down, calm down. I'm sure it's okay. Like, trust their judgment. So I'm on all fours and I just hear, we told her to let herself in. And I just hear someone behind me with the most calming voice. Hi, Diane. Nice to meet you. And I'm like struggling. And I immediately felt calm. So she was so sweet, like such an angel on earth. She was there around like almost 8 p.m. So she tricked me into going into the bathroom. She's like, let's go try to pee. So she got me to go sit on the toilet. And I'm sure there are moms listening who are like, oh, the dilation station. So she had me sit on the toilet for 3 contractions. And whoo, that was something. And Doug's like in between, like, what is happening? So that's when I lost my birth cork, aka my like mucus plug. And I remember
That's
thinking
when
like,
she popping bottles.
yeah, I was like, is this the baby? No. Like for a second, I was like, is this the baby? No. So then we get up and we go into the living room and I sit on this IKEA stool and my water breaks. And I've heard some women say like for them, it was a trickle, like in Babes, the movie. This was like it broke. it,
Gosh.
it broke. So that happened. So water broke. And looking back, I remember when I sent Neil to the store, I was like, can you get me some panty liners? I might need some panty liners because, I needed the diaper. We needed the diaper. So put on your list the Rael. They're like postpartum undies. Like they're a lot softer.
What's the other brand? Cora?
Cora, Freedom Mom also has some, but I like the Rael ones because they just felt softer. So we needed that.
No, I'm saying I think there's another. Rael's organic. I think there's another organic cotton brand also. Maybe
might be
it's
Cora.
They make
or
tampons
Honey Pot
too, right?
Yeah,
I don't remember. We can
I'll link some in the show notes.
Yeah.
For your kit. So our doula, this was a great idea. So people asked what I ate or like sipped on. Someone asked like what mock cocks I brought with me too. So our doula was like, Neil, get some raw honey or maple syrup. So we had raw honey from our farmer. He put that in a Tupperware for some easy carbs. And he packed up my electrolytes. Element was what I brought with me. And we packed up whatever we didn't have in the car. So it was a 35-minute drive to the birth center. And luckily no snow, but it was like by now like 8:30. And I listened to a message from my bestie who used to be a doula, and she was like, girl, your breath, you need to get up there soon. We're talking to our midwives and I'm like trying to text them between contractions, prepare the tub. Like I want to get in the tub. And then my friend Topsy called me and I don't know what I answered. I answered because I wanted a distraction. And she was like, oh girl, best of luck. So we're going to the birth center and I'm on all fours in the back of the car and Neil's driving safely. He was very calm. I wondered how he would feel through this. He was pretty calm. And I was like, just blast my playlist. So I'm like trying to rock my hips to rock your hips in the back, like chewing on my duffel bag. And at one point, did you feel this when the car with Abe? The car, yeah.
The car is cruel. The car is cruel. Like that's part of why I was just like, let's do this at home because like
I don't know if we're getting in the car.
Again, with Abe, I had no idea how far along I was at that point. And I have a vivid memory of driving down this road in Englewood, and there's these beautiful big houses with big lawns, and looking out the window and almost asking Donnie to pull the car over because I was like, I feel like I just want to poop in that person's lawn. Like I fully would have had a baby in their lawn if we pulled over.
Right. Because that what you just said there, I remember the doula saying like, if you feel like you have to poop, your baby's probably like really close.
I just want to poop in their lawn.
Yeah. And that's another thing. People, I've had friends who never, and before I had a baby, I was like, I'm so scared of like being naked and vulnerable in front of someone, or if I poop, or the sounds I make. And you get into labor, I was like, I don't care. And then I remember, if my midwives do listen to this, I'm sorry, but I remember being really cranky early in labor, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to shit out of spite for the wrong number. I'm going to shit out of spite as soon as I get in that tub. I was just so mad. It was fine. But yeah, pulling over, I remember our doula was like, if you really need to, I'll be behind you, driving behind you, and pull over. But I remember being halfway there and this sensation of like vomiting down. Like I could just feel my body move her down, and I was like, uh-oh. And I was trying to clench my butthole as hard as I could because I was like, I'm not having her in this car. So we get to the birth center, and sure enough, I did not give any fucks about how I look. I walked in looking like Winnie the Pooh because I had the water broke, right? I ruined another pair of pants. So I remember walking in the threshold. It's basically like a house, this birth center. Took off my pants. And I was just in a tank top, but I was bottomless like Winnie the Pooh. And I said hi to my midwife. And I went into where the birth tub was, and they had the lights down. Like, this is something I loved about the birth center, is that like, it feels like a house, like a bedroom, but like not a mess in my house.
Mhm.
So we get there, walked in like Winnie the Pooh, and it was just me, Neil, and our doula. Labor, like I got to labor in the tub in the dark with these fairy lights for a little bit while our midwives were getting other things set up. Someone asked, did you have all the emergency supplies and protocols if something were to go wrong? Yes, this is something that we talked about at length before with our midwives. They're equipped to handle certain emergencies with me, with baby, and I trusted them that they would know if something went wrong or was if I was in danger, that we would move to the hospital. The hospital was like 5 minutes from this birth center, but I felt like this was a happy medium for me. And I personally felt safer here where the lights are dim. These women have been to over 500 births. They knew their shit, versus at a hospital with lots of lights, lots of people. So I felt safe. I felt really safe there. That said, things kind of slowed down once we got there, just for a little bit. And my doula asked, do you want any pictures? And I was like, I do not need any POV shots. I don't need any POV shots. I don't need to see that. But if you want to do some candids. And later I saw like, oh, I didn't realize I was hanging out by the sink for a bit. I got into the tub and just stayed there. So I really knew that I wanted to be in the water. I know you were with Ori and we shared that on your episode, but man, as soon as I got in the water, like the relief felt
Yeah.
so good.
I think there's something to that. I think it's a beautiful transition for baby who lived in water the whole time. And I also think you might know this about yourself. Like, some people are just water people. Like, if you're the kind of person who at the end of a long day, you get in the shower and you make it as hot as possible and you just like can't pry yourself out of there, even though you'd rather be sleeping, like you're a person who
Mhm.
might enjoy a water birth, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I
if
think
you've
most
been
of their
used
clients do.
by water, yeah, like that, it's really nice.
And I know there are hospitals now that have women who want to opt for unmedicated if they can, or for as long as they can. And a lot of hospitals might let you labor in a tub for a while, but not deliver in a tub for whatever reason. But they knew I wanted to be in the tub, and someone kept coming by and like bringing more hot water, and they were pouring it over my back. That felt so good. Someone asked again about several questions were about intensity and pain. In my experience, I felt like as soon as the contraction would start, my doula would squeeze my hips, or Neil would squeeze my hips.
Hip squeeze.
Amazing. It took a lot of the sensation away,
Yeah.
honestly. That and the water, between that and the water. So that was incredible. And my doula, so doulas can also support the husband, the partner, in like giving them a job. But Neil was pretty intuitive. Like, he just sat in front of me outside the tub, and he would give me water or spoons of honey. So the honey for easy carbs was such a clutch idea, because I did not feel like chewing anything else. Like, I wasn't sure if I would vomit. Some people do when they get towards transition, but I never did. And something else I liked about the birth center, no cervical checks. I wasn't hooked up to monitors. But if you're someone who wants peace of mind of like, how is baby? As soon as I got there, they had the Doppler and stethoscope. And so a student midwife would intermittently ask if she could monitor baby's heartbeat. And then I do remember much later on, my midwife, the lead midwife, was like, can I check baby? And when I heard her say complete, I was like, oh, it's on. Like, we're at a 10. We're, we're at a 10. So I knew it was on. She even invited me. She's like, I think it was after transition. I said, does she have hair? Because she said the head was close. And she was like, do you want to feel? And I don't know why I asked it. Like, that's what I was like, going to send her back up there until she had hair. And so then she could come out. I don't know. But she's like, do you want to feel? I was like, no. Ugh. Ugh. I don't know why.
Good reps. You know,
Ew.
doctor, that Dr. Spachemin line. He's like, everything about this is disgusting.
Yeah. Yes. Very much that. And I was like, no, I'll just push her out and then I'll feel what's going on. She's like, okay. But it felt very not intrusive, very like respectful. And like, I'll cry if I think about it much. But the fact that it was in the dark, and there's my midwife and two student midwives, and then doula Neil, and they were all so encouraging the whole time. So I didn't end up going with the talk shit to me route to encourage me.
Be nice to me, okay?
Yeah, no, they were so kind and compassionate, and that's the only way I ever want to birth. But they would say things like, doing a great job. Like, I remember saying like, oh, that push wasn't as strong as I thought it could be. And they said it was as strong as it needed to be. Stuff like that. And just felt so held. So back to the pain, because I know a lot of people asked about that in my DMs. My doulas offered the reframing it from pain to intensity.
Mhm.
And I know we've talked on the podcast is like pain has a purpose. And that was something I came back to is like, I get a reward after this. I get a baby. So I knew that like and another thing they had in the room was like every surge versus contraction. Every surge brings you closer to your baby. A strong contraction's a good one. And I knew to expect it, kind of like a bell curve. So it was like I could feel it ramping up and it would peak in the middle of a contraction. And then it would give me a little bit of time to rest. Now, tell me if this is true, like, especially if it was really fast for Abe, do you not get much time in between generally with a second or
I could not even tell you what happened with Abe's birth. Like, it was just so quick that I don't even like remember that part of it. He
Yeah.
literally, it was just like, it literally was like my body just like pushed eject. Like, it was not. Yeah, like the parts I remember were the parts before when like we got to the hospital desk and people were asking Donnie to sign insurance papers and I was on all fours like someone catch this baby please. Like
Wait, you were like that babe scene where she's crawling through the hospital.
no, 1,000%. That's exactly what it was. And that like so I don't really remember the actual like active labor and transition part of it. It literally was like my body just pushed eject.
Yeah.
But with Minnie, because that was like forever long and I pushed for like 3 hours, I was like sleeping between contractions. Like my body was just
Yeah.
like giving out in between. And then Ori was just somewhere in between, like same kind of deal. Like you get a little rest, kind of recoup, hype yourself up.
Yeah. I did feel like I could rest. I remember people saying that like some might take a micro nap in between. And I heard that generally the first is longer than other additional labors, or deliveries, but I would get a little rest. I would hydrate in between. And honestly, I felt like the back labor and stuff that happened at home earlier on was more painful, more intense, which is interesting because my water broke and you'd think less cushion after that. But I think the stretches helped her move into a better position. So I
Yeah.
had some time to hydrate. And honestly, I feel like all the training that I did through SDHH and all the breath that I did, all the work for pelvic floor all through my pregnancy helped me tremendously because it really did feel like a marathon. Like the days after birth, it wasn't like I was most sore in my undercarriage. It was like, it was my legs, it was my
Yeah.
abs. I spent most of my time on all fours. That just felt most intuitive for me. They would offer other suggestions for me to try. And I was like, no, I feel best on all fours. I thought of like rock back and what you've taught me about the pelvis, like knees in, like things like that. So our doula would make suggestions too. But I really just felt like my body took over and got to just find what was comfortable naturally. But I felt like things were less intense too later on, ironically, because they were more predictable, the
Mhm.
frequency of contractions. And personally, I didn't feel like it hurt as bad as I thought it was going to. Perhaps in part because I brainwashed. I was like, it's gonna get way worse. It's gonna
The
get
mind is
so
a
bad.
powerful thing, right?
But then I was like, oh, I really thought that it was gonna be terrible. And like a lot of my friends told me is that like when you're in it, you don't care what noises you make. I did not care. You don't care like what you look like. Did not care. You don't care if you shit. I don't know if I did or not. Probably did. Yeah, it's probably really personal, but these are the details that I would tell like a close girlfriend. So then we got to transition and pushing. My doula said that I asked if I was in early labor when I was actively pushing. So again, I was like, we're going to be here all night. And
Just
she
like
was
such
like,
a wonderful example of how you're just like not on planet Earth. Like
yeah. And they said I stayed pretty, like I did forget some parts of this, but they said I was pretty lucid through all of it. I was talking about what I wanted to eat for Thanksgiving. And yeah, through transition, it wasn't as intense, but I do remember saying I'm safe and that I can do this. And I kept saying that a lot. And then towards the end, after I was complete, they said like I've heard of ring of fire. It was firing. But it did not last that long. And then I felt really encouraged because my midwife was coaching me on how to push without tearing, hopefully.
mhm.
So that was another thing I really wanted to do with Unmedicated is I knew that it would be intense, but like hopefully I'd be able to feel things and know when to stop pushing. So she was like, gonna have you grown down So the vocalizing helps so much with pain relief and the hip squeezes. So lots of growling down versus like a high pitched scream. Towards the end, there were some high pitches, and I did hear that that's pretty universal, like as you get really close. And I asked Neil like several weeks later, and he was like, yeah, it sounded a little bit intense. And I could see how if you're in a hospital, like be scaring other people. But
well, also if you're having a home birth, like it just, Donnie and I were joking recently about how like we hear our downstairs neighbor playing piano. Like I forgot that everyone here heard me have my baby.
yeah, I forgot. I might have asked you, like, did you let them know, or you're like they figured it out?
They know.
I had
And
a friend.
actually for this upcoming birth, I mean, we'll see if I make it to 40 weeks, but my parents are coming like same deal, right around, right a couple days before my due date. And they're staying in an Airbnb in our building. It's like,
picture them
have
poking their
fun.
head in your building. Is it the one like really close to you?
No, there's a new one on the first floor, so it's a few floors down, but
Little
still.
separation. Unless you want them there in the room, which I don't think that you
No,
do.
thank you.
No thanks, but no thanks.
Not for me.
A friend of mine said that they were trying to get to the hospital and they had like not a fire escape, but they had to walk down the back of their apartment and they were just like screaming the whole way down. People were like, what is happening? But when I was in it, like it just felt like relief. So I know that can sound scary if you haven't had a baby yet. Like I told a friend who's thinking of if she wants to do this or not, and I was like, it really didn't feel that bad in the moment. Maybe to other people it sounded worse than it was, but the pain relief I felt, and it felt really powerful to just like primally like roar.
Yeah.
And I lost my voice. The hip squeezes really helped tremendously. And honestly, I had like a calf cramp that was worse than the labor pain. Like at one point I had a Charlie horse. And I was like, my leg. So someone started massaging my leg. But yeah, my midwife was coaching me on when to stop and the counter pressure. Like if you're in the water or if you're out of the water, they might use a washcloth with like olive oil on it, on your gooch, on your lady gooch, girly gooch, so you don't tear. Hopefully. And so coaching me through that or when to switch my breath pattern really helped. So she shot out at one point, and I remember my midwife was like, I'm gonna hike her to you. So she hiked her to me like a football, and it was so surreal. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a baby. And that was just like the craziest moment finally being done. And what they say is true, like all the pain I felt like went away as soon as she came out. And I was just out of body for a second, that I couldn't believe that I caught a person out of my body. It was so weird.
You're a portal to another dimension.
Wild. Someone said that birth is extraordinary and ordinary at the same time. Like, I'm like, everybody does, like women do this. And I think I said, I can't believe women do this all the time. And one of my midwife was like, well, usually they like wait a year or so between, but like.
It is truly the craziest experience ever. And it doesn't get any less crazy. Like,
yeah.
The first time it happens to you, you're like, this is quite literally the craziest thing ever, but it just like keeps being that, you know what I mean? And like breastfeeding also, just like everything about it is wild.
It is. And I felt so connected to, I don't know, it sounds so cheese, but I don't care. I felt so much more connected to other women than ever. And I was just like, women do such cool stuff. And I just felt so emotional. I still do anytime I think about it, like being supported by those women who I really trusted with myself in like the most vulnerable moments. And immediately they put her on my chest and we got to just snuggle in the water for a while. And someone brought me apple juice and I was convinced it was the best apple juice I've ever had in my life. It was just Mott's. But it was like
just really underrated though.
But I was like, I mean, I had been drinking throughout labor, but I was like,
yeah,
oh, that's the best. So they let us hang out there. And some things that like, I mean, everybody hears about the labor and birth, but yeah, then you got to get the placenta out. And it's just like, that's not fun. It's not fun. And I lost the mind to body connection, but I remember after like half an hour, they're like, you need to do this. Had some little potatoes. So had that. But then they like brought us right into a bed and someone brought me like cheese and apples. And we just got to like look at this little person that just arrived. It was the craziest experience. And she did have a lot of hair. That was a fun little treat. But oh my goodness. So I would say too, the fundal massage wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but having to push the placenta out was kind of a buzzkill, but it did have to come out.
Yeah. It's pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Did
Like
you
you
do
made an
anything with
organ?
your placenta?
Yes. So I didn't think about it until that night. And they asked me if I wanted to encapsulate it. And I was like, sure. Cause I mean, I guess it's just going to go in the trash. And I made it. So I did a tincture. I got a tincture and capsules.
Did you end up using them? Did you like the experience? Did you?
I felt good from them. So I did hear our herbalist and midwives were talking about like everyone can have a different experience birth to birth or placenta to placenta, depending on what their body needs, I guess. I took them for a little bit until I had tata-tear mastitis because you don't want to take those
Mhm.
when you're sick. But I thought, why not? Did you ever do anything with yours?
I didn't. I shared on my birth story podcast that I was thinking of planting my placenta with a tree.
Oh
I
yeah, we
think
did talk about that.
yeah, I have a friend who did that for all of her births, and she's like lives in a home that she owns, and her backyard just has like a cherry blossom tree, and like it's like each tree represents, and held the nutrients of that birth experience, and I think that's
Oh,
just
that's
like
cool.
so beautiful. But yeah, my placenta from Ori is actually still in my freezer because I just like didn't get around to buying a tree.
Someday. I think ours did come with like a cord keepsake. I was
Aw.
like, and it was like in the shape of a heart, but
Yeah.
then part of me that was like, well, I made that. But I did like afterwards another thing that I loved about birth center, or if you were to do this at home, is like you just got to get in your bed, and here I got
Mhm.
to get in the bed there. I think we finally were going to go to sleep at 3, but it was like, how am I going to sleep after this like super exciting thing just happened? And we both were just staring at her like, oh, she's here.
Yeah,
Pinch
it's
me.
so much adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly, I think, one of the most underrated things about home birth or something like a birth center is not just the birth experience itself, but then the aftercare when there's not
Mm-hmm.
just like beeping monitors going off all night and people coming into your room
No.
and like I think that to me was so unsettling, that experience, and I didn't like it. I liked it just being this like natural transition to our life where now we are in our bed and there is
You
nothing
get to
beeping
rest.
and I control the lighting.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the twinkle lights were on in our room, and they did do like a couple of checks, but yeah, I wasn't hooked up to things. I heard that in the hospital they come in like, well, you probably experience this with Minnie every couple of hours. Hey, mama, to check on you.
yeah.
And you're like, get the fuck out.
Yeah, and everything is beeping and there's just like blue light coming from everywhere. Like it was just
Mm-mm.
it wasn't for me. I know
No.
that now.
Yeah, they just kind of let us rest, and we got to hang out there the next day as long as we wanted to. But um yeah, I remember we were like, all right, let's get out of here. Let's go get some sushi and go home. Like that's all I wanted to have pickup for a pickup meal. But um really, really loved the experience. So even with some things that did not go to plan, like the wrong number, like some of those, it really still went great. And I think part of that was just knowing that like here are my preferences, and if that doesn't work out, like it'll still work out in the way that um it should. And everything was fine. We loved our doula, Allison, who was our backup doula. And I was just so grateful for the support of my midwives. I trusted them. I did not tear. Had tiny tear that didn't need any stitches, but I remember telling them that I had a Brazilian where I tore in college that was worse than this. Oh man, yeah, never. That was in a scenario where I did not want a student to do that ever again. Don't let a student do your Brazilian wax in college. Yeah, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. So I got to rest up, and our midwives came and visited us like the next day, which also I was really excited about. So I didn't have to schlep baby to an office like the day after, pediatrician's office. So someone asked, what would you tell aspiring home birthers? And my top one was find a team you trust. And doula. I think no matter what birth you want, or what birth you end up having, they can be such a tremendous support, not only for you, but for your partner as well. Coaching you emotionally through birth. That was just best money spent for us.
Yeah. I think I don't know, I think like you said, listening to positive birth stories, I think, is a huge deal. I think knowing that you can do this and this is how we always did this and how capable you are, like we were talking about earlier, just the brainwashing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny that you kept mentioning the hip squeeze because there's just something about the hip squeeze. Like I would totally free birth, but I'd need to pay someone to squeeze my hips, you
Yeah.
know? Because like I need Donnie to be there for my emotional support. I need Donnie to be there with my adrenal cocktails.
Mhm.
Someone is getting paid to squeeze my hips. You
Someone
know,
strong.
they
Yeah.
cannot tap out at any moment. Like that is the thing for me that is the support I need. Like
Yeah, that
number
was the
one.
best thing. I mean, honestly, like I remember in the weeks leading up, I was like, do I need to buy a TENS unit? Like, can I somehow get nitrous oxide? Like that's another option that some women might use in the hospital if they are going unmedicated. We actually, Neil's such a troll. His sense of humor, I think you've experienced it a little bit, is it can be dry and like you're not sure if he's kidding. We go into the birth center and he's like, don't worry, we brought our own fentanyl.
Donnie does the same thing, by the way. We were in the park this weekend and we're just like sitting on a bench. There's people around. Like, I don't know who knows him, who doesn't. And he just goes, this whole my body, my choice thing. Like, your body, my choice.
People are like, is he serious?
It's like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, Neil does have some of those bits that we've talked about in public where it's like he's just such a goofball. But tips for aspiring home birthers is do what you like, to listen to your gut. I think that's important. Have the support like that you feel good about. For me, it was midwives and our wonderful doulas. I would definitely go that route again. And there was a part of me that was like, well, if I don't have a hospital experience to compare this to, or like a medicated experience, like I just have this to compare it to. And saying that, knowing that if I were to have a future birth experience, it could be completely different. And I think for me, it was the mindset training also was some of the biggest help. But also the training that led up
Mhm.
to birth, because I can't imagine not having any sort of like physical fitness capacity or conditioning capacity going into this. So I don't think I shared this earlier, but for me, it was an hour and 40 minutes of pushing. And then my midwife said, like, for a first timer, just the whole thing for me went faster um, than happens for a lot of first time moms. And it really just went pretty smoothly, all things considered. So I'm really grateful for that. And I think the training and the mindset training really, really set me up for the success that I hoped for.
Yeah, like you were saying, I want to just touch on this before we close out because I think it's so important to hear. I think, like we talked about on that episode, is it pregnancy safe? Like, our mindset as a society is like, is this workout safe for pregnancy? And we're not often thinking, like, how can I utilize this amazing gift that we have of strength training, of fitness
Of breath.
to support me and help me manage pain in my pregnancy and help me prepare for labor in a way that I could not without it. And like you said, spending all that time on all fours, like that's a
Mhm.
real strength and endurance challenge and something
My
that only
wrists and
comes.
arms and abs. Whew.
Yeah, it comes from spending time in those positions and spending time under load in those positions. And then I think what you touched on about how your body and your breath were kind of figuring things out as you went and were
Mhm.
intuitively getting into certain positions. The amazing thing about the labor prep work that we do and the type of strength training that we do is what we are doing is trying to remove restrictions from the body. Like we are allowing your body to learn how to spend time in these positions. We're allowing your pelvis to learn how to spend time in these different positions so
Mhm.
that they can intuitively do so when the time comes. The problem is if we're like holding on to areas of our pelvic floor for dear life and we never teach them it's okay to let go, or this is a position that you can find with the pelvis and with the hips. Our body doesn't have the opportunity to do that intuitively on its own during labor. And that's where all those restrictions and stalls arise.
I
So
thought of
if
you in the labor prep. I mean, I think I told you offline as like I felt like my tailbone was in the way, and I thought of you in your pelvis model when we were like chatting one day of like how to move my knees to open the back of my pelvis, because I was like my
yeah,
butt's in the way.
get out of here. But truly, I think the more time that we can spend making sure that we have access to these different positions, the more intuitively our body does this in the way that it was always designed to do this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story with us.
Thanks for listening. We got
were-
intimate, didn't we?
Yeah. We're so happy to hear this story. We're so happy for you and Ollie and Neil. And what else? What should we tell them?
It was a ride. Stay hydrated. The minis definitely got me through that marathon of birth. Training definitely got me through the marathon of birth, but also listening to stories like these. So I hope that if this is something that you are aspiring for, that it is a preference for your future birth, that you feel more empowered in that choice and prepared, and know that there are resources like the ones that we've shared here, or through both of our practices, that can hopefully support you through that journey, if that is your choice as well. So birth is extraordinary and ordinary, and it's definitely not casual, but you can do it. And whether that is unmedicated, whether that is fully medicated, or what, we support you. And thank you for listening.
And more than ever, unclench that beehole.
Unclench that butthole and that baby.
Okay, we love you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the GYST podcast. As always, your ratings and reviews mean the world to us.
If you enjoyed this episode, take a second, take a little screenshot, throw it up on your Instagram story, and tag us so we can thank you properly for sharing this show with other women that it might help.
See you next week. We love you. Bye.